welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we've got playa props here on Friday to close out the work week with you guys. Looking at 9 games in the NBA, so plenty to choose from once again. After a pretty full Thursday night, 2-2 on the playa props, but looking to turn it around a little bit, or at least bump it up a little bit. Let's get some 3-1 to close out the week for the folks here. Let's go ahead and kick it off with your first player prop here for Friday night, Nate.
Yeah, although you did try to tell me just the points with LeVert, which I guess would have hit. No assists for the man after he was. Yeah, I did say that was a red flag though. But
to be fair to you, he had to play restricted minutes in the first half after 2 fouls in the first quarter. They kind of played it safe with him. So
yeah, well, I guess defensive limitations, that'll happen. But let's go the other side of that matchup last night. Let's take Paolo. 12.5 rebounds, assists. Not going to add the points, despite the fact that he broke out with 36 against Atlanta. Now we're taking on Memphis, and you probably see a healthy dose of Triple J here, who is suddenly the Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner, and is going to be all over him, maybe forcing him to pass more. But Paolo's been the point guard anyway, with Suggs out lately, and with Franz being the clear number one scorer. His last 6, about 6 assists per game on 8-9 potentials. Last 4 is actually leading the team in rebound chances and grabbing about 8 per game. So I bumped this number up. One, if I was a bookmaker and it's minus 105 here for the 13, maybe they're concerned about back-to-backs. But Paolo is a young guy who really hasn't seen much change in his numbers on short rest. In fact, last year he was kind of better scoring-wise when he was on the short rest. His last time, in a blowout at Denver, he only got 30 minutes. He got 8 and 4 in terms of the rebounds, assists. But I expect this one to be closer. Memphis also on a back-to-back. Probably no Ja, which means they're due for some offensive regression without Ja. It's like every time he's out, they seem to light it up, but they're probably going to miss a bunch more shots here in Orlando. Are the Grizz. We know they play so fast that other teams just pile up stats, and that's key. I mean, in the last 7, they're actually allowing the most points, rebounds, and assists to power forwards. 12 rebounds per game to the position, and they allow the most assists per game to the position on the season, in part, again, because Triple J is tough to score on down low, so you're going to be kicking it out, and because the Grizz having a terrible above-the-break 3 defense. So if you kick it out, you're probably going to be kicking it out to an open shooter, can knock down some stuff. Paolo, for what it's worth, much more reliable at home, 8 and 6 in terms of the rebounds, assists versus 6.7, 4.2 on the road. And I like the matchup. I like him to come out of the break here and kind of bust the slump, which we saw in that first game, because he came in sputtering, and now I think him and Franz are going to try to really carry this team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not totally afraid of the points for Paolo, but I can understand just playing the rebounds and assists in this one. If you wanted to play the points separately, just play them by themselves. But he's going to be probably on ball just as much as he's been. So we'll see. I don't know what to do with the Anthony Black versus Cole Anthony thing, but it hasn't really impacted Paolo in terms of which one of them is getting more minutes or which one's starting. They just kind of interchange them for offense, defense, and we'll probably just keep seeing that for them. And then, for Franz, we've seen him dominate when Paolo's taking a back seat, but I'm not totally sure Paolo was looking like himself until the last 3 games, essentially, where he's finally come on the 2 before the break. Helps to play Atlanta twice in that time frame, but we know Memphis just gave up a $127 to Indy, and I think we need to start realizing that a defense that Taylor Jenkins' team is playing that's all about trapping and forcing turnovers hasn't amounted to limiting points. It's just turned into more points for them off of those turnovers. So even their good defensive possessions just turn into points in some way, which is just an over. So we're going to have a lot of possessions. We're going to have a lot of opportunity for Paolo to either score or facilitate, and then love the boards. I think he's liable to get a double-double on the rebounds as well in this one, the way that they'll need the help. And that I don't know how they'll play Goga either, and that's a big part of it, because when they play Wendell, you got a lot more involvement with Paolo in the rebounding, and Wendell's been a lot. He probably is better for this game with the sort of versatility of the bigs on Memphis. But let's go to that Miami and Toronto game. This is not going to be a popular play. I just have too much value on this play with my numbers to not hit it. So Jonathan Mogbo, everybody's favorite Raptors center, over 6.5 points. It's actually even money on DraftKings. It's just sort of hovering right around even money, minus 105. Jakob Poeltl's not in this game, and since Jakob Pertl hasn't played in the last roughly 4 or 5 games. This dude's playing at least 25 plus minutes. On the season, when he's played without Jakob Pertl, he's up to 24 minutes per game versus 17 minutes per game that he's playing as the backup center when Pertl's available, right? I also think you're just going to need him regardless. Like, I think you put his floor at 25 minutes in this game, and you could see him up to 28 or so minutes because you've got Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo starting on this team. You've got 6'9" Andrew Wiggins at the 3 now. They could very well run those 3 guys with Jovic if he's healthy, or 6'7" Jaquez. This is a big team, right? This Miami Heat team has now become one of the best lockdown wing defending teams in the league with the ability to combat you at the rim. So, like, you have to have bigs out there. Jonathan Magbo might not be 7 feet tall, but he's big enough to rebound and clear some space down low. If you look at him without Pertl on the season as well, 7 of the 10 games he's played without him, he's gone over 6.5 points. He's averaging 10 per game in this time frame, or excuse me, 8.5 per game in that time frame. If you look at the games without Pertl where he's playing at least 20 minutes, he's up to 10.1 points per game. I cannot see him playing fewer than 20 minutes in this one. His shot attempts double from 3.5 to 7. His free throw attempts double from basically 1 a game to 2. So at least you get some options there. He's also putting up a 3-point attempt per game without Jakob Pertl. I'll just throw that out there. There's some opportunity to stretch the floor a little bit with him. And then if you look at the way that he's played in games where he's just used, like, as long as he gets 7 shots, he's over in 80% of the games that he's shot the ball at least 7 times this season, like 9 for 11, that he's going over 6.5. So it's just a usage bump for him. It's not like this is an awesome matchup. It's not the worst matchup either, by the way, because he is able. This team does give up a ton of putbacks for the Heat. They're in the bottom half of the league, limiting second chance points overall and second chance opportunities, offensive rebound percentage. So this is going to be like the way that Magbo does it. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be bruising his way to like 9 points in this game is how I'm projecting him.
Yeah, and only 5.5 rebounds if you want to play it that way, right? If you think that the Heat are gonna get back to their clunky, low scoring ways, total dropping on this game.
True.
If you're just chasing the minutes, he's at 8.7 per 36 in terms of the boards, and has been getting the peripheral stats. No Pirtle certainly changed the way I looked at this, because I was thinking about fading RJ Barrett, but he's actually been putting up more numbers, more peripheral stats without Pirtle, for what that's worth. I guess more of like the 3-out weave that they're going to run when they don't have their big man down there to facilitate. But yeah, my second pick is going to be Jalen Green in. They're in Houston, right? Hosting Mini, and they're favored. And we don't know if Ant's going to go with the hip. We don't know if Rudy Gobert is going to go. Probably more key for this angle with back spasms, because obviously you'd love to be able to attack the rim a little bit more with no Gobert. Either way, like, maybe he's not fully up to his standards. And Naz Reid's been out there. He's not a bad defender, but I think he helps the offense more than the defense. For the Wolves, who have actually been bad in isolation this year, the 8th worst ISO defense. So that's where Jalen Green comes in terms of, like, we can't get anything going if we're the Rockets without Fred VanVleet. And that's why, it's been a lot of like, all right, Jalen, like, bail out this possession or just make something happen right from the get-go, because we don't have much when we're in the half court. So, I mean, he was benched along with both Alpi and Dillon, right, in their last game before the break. And I expect him to respond positively to that. Did I say I'm just taking the points, 21.5 points here. Yeah. I mean, you could take the assists. He does have 4.3 assists per game on 9 potentials. His last 7 now without Fred VanVleet, but you take away the benching, averaging a solid 22, usage rate up close to 30%. That includes going for 28, 6, and 5 on 33% usage against Mini, because again, you're going to have to isolate a little bit against this defense. Ant was going off in that game, so he did not have as much energy defensively. And Jalen Green, a bit of a showman, trying to match that a little bit. This is a nationally televised game, so I think we kind of expect Ant to play, and we expect more of that kind of back and forth. But most importantly, this is just a cap of saying, like, the Rockets don't have other options offensively right now, and getting Jabari Smith back is not going to help that. It's still going to be a situation where they're just like, we don't know how to get organized without FEV, so let's just give the ball to Jalen and hope he can create.
Yeah, makes perfect sense to me. I mean, Fred being out is as important as anything. I don't really care that much about Jabari being back. I imagine he's mostly going to take Tari Eason minutes. I don't think he can come back and take Amon minutes right at this point. So I think we're just going to keep seeing Amon playing alongside Jalen Green. That's been totally great for Jalen, with a little bit less focal point on a guard like Fred, even other wings out there. Dylan Brooks, not the focal point. He's been getting way more shots than you would expect, so I'd be careful if his stuff is still high as well. But I'm with you on this one for Jalen. That's where I'd be going if I was taking points in this game. Like you said, they don't pass, like they don't get assists. That's not how Houston scores. It's your turn, my turn stuff with a lot of individuality. But let me go to my man. I got to take him one more time. This might be the last time, man. We're getting close here. It's 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists for Ausar Thompson. I've been taking this since 15.5, like 2 weeks ago, and just being like, great, I'll just keep hitting it. So you put it at 20, and they finally did it. Now, he has been going up in minutes, so it's kind of like, well, yes, there's going to be a bump in his prop line. There's going to be a bump in his minutes, I got to imagine. He's up to about 25, at least in the last 6 or so, hovering right around it, at least 23. They actually blew out the Bulls a couple times, which obviously impacted Ausar's ability to stay on the floor as long. They are sticking to their rotations decently there. JB is sticking to some pretty consistent rotations, but Ausar has been they've been looking to get his numbers up, his minutes continuing to rise. Probably means a little bit less like Ron Holland and guys like that, which I don't think Bakerstaff's going to be sad to see those guys' minutes go down. But if you look, it's really just about the minutes with him. If you give him the minutes here, he's at about 22 PRA per game. No, excuse me, 24.5 PRA per game in the 9 games that he's played at least 25 minutes this season. Over in 7 of 9 of those games, looking at 11.8, we'll say, rebound chances per game, 7 boards per game, looking at about 9.5 field goal attempts. Like everything gets up to a volume that you would expect him to be able to get his, plus the assists. They still have that listed at 2.5. So that's why I like adding the assists a lot, because it's juiced all the way down. But 2.5 assists for him, he's gone over that in 5 straight as well. When he plays 25 plus minutes, usually gets the assists as well, averaging 3.2 assists per game. 3.8 assists per game now after a big game of diming up before the break as well. So yeah, I mean, in this matchup against, I don't know yet what we should be expecting necessarily from a team like the Spurs. I do think that like the 109 they gave up to Phoenix last night was great. But once again, I fell for Phoenix still having those 3 guys on their team and not being a tire fire in the locker room, right? And so that doesn't lead to defensive that doesn't lead to the ability to score on offense for Phoenix or limit what San Antonio wanted to do. I think we're going to keep seeing pace though, is the main thing. Like San Antonio definitely got out. They didn't have Wemby, but they were very happy to play like Sohan and Barnes together essentially, and just let them go at it with with a little bit of Bismack in there. Still got under 20 minutes for Bismack, who got the start as the sort of traditional center. But either way, like I don't like this defense for the Spurs is what it comes down to without Wemby, right? Who is just a negator of mistakes. Like he just washed away any wing mistakes that this team might have made. And I don't love it. Like I don't, outside of Stephon Castle, honestly, and like Devin themselves a weak point on defense. In addition, like they don't have the guys in space that I like. Maybe we see more minutes from Sohan to guard Ausar, but that's the only guy that I look at on the floor and I'm like, yeah, maybe he gives that guy a run for his money. And he hasn't been getting up to above 25 plus minutes for whatever reason. So we'll see how the Spurs work their rotation. But if Ausar is going to play 25 minutes, I'm going to take him over 20.5. Once this gets to about 21, 22, maybe I'll settle down, but that's where this number should be for me.
Yeah, it's not even about like who guards him individually, right? Because he's such an off-ball cutter type guy, like right where he's just playing off Cade, and it's about the Pistons having team success, which you look at like if everyone except the Cavs that they've played in their last 7 here, they've had a 120 plus offensive rating, and Auxerre has had 120 plus. He's had 135 plus in 6 of his last 8, right? So he's just thriving against some bad defenses. I don't even say the Spurs were a good defense with Wemby. Yeah, like you're saying, he's just kind of erasing mistakes and changing things. But yeah, they're going to be a pretty awful defensive team without them. I wouldn't be fooled by them beating the Suns, who just have poor vibes. And this is a massive rest advantage as well for the Pistons. So you get an energy guy like Auxerre in there against a team that just played. You should have a big advantage in terms of getting the hustle stats.
Yeah, big letdown game for the Spurs, in my opinion. You go from playing a conference rival, a big rival for Chris Paul, who spent so much time in Phoenix, and really just historically rivalry. But like now you come to Detroit. Very big letdown game, in my opinion. They're not in Detroit either. They're still welcoming this team who's coming in very well rested, young guys playing, some of those Spurs. Like I'd be very careful betting on the Spurs, and I'm starting to talk myself into potentially taking the dog here in that game as well. But that's all the time we have for you in player props. Definitely make sure to go ahead and subscribe to that page so you don't miss any of the other episodes we're bringing you, like those best bets we have up for you today. And until we see you next, happy betting.